All right, so Jay, as much fun as college basketball was over the weekend, and we'll get to that, there was still a lot of NBA going on.
A ton of it.
Yeah, a ton of NBA. And it was not a particularly good weekend for one LA team. No, not the Clippers. We're talking about the Los Angeles Lakers, who unfortunately lost King Braun to a high ankle sprain in their 99-94 loss to the Atlanta Hawks on Saturday. The estimates say he could be out anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks. I mean, he's a 36-year-old man, so it could be longer than that in order for him to come back. But if anybody knows anything about LeBron, you know that he attacks everything that he approaches in the NBA. So I would say probably sooner rather than later. But this is a significant blow to the Lakers, already without Anthony Davis, who they've been without at least for, the last month?
Yeah.
I think. So this is a huge injury. So to start with, Jay, how can the Lakers, with this crushing injury to LeBron, how can they overcome this?
Can the Lakers overcome this?
Can they overcome this?
How can they, and can they? I mean, that's two pretty loaded questions there.
Yeah.
But no, in all actuality, I don't think they can. I don't think there's a way for them to overcome it. Like, there's not an actual path to success in this. Like, the big thing with this is that with LeBron's injury being a high ankle sprain, you saw the video, right?
Yes, I did.
I did see the video. I was watching portions of the game, and then I, clicked away, saw exactly what happened. It's like it rolled the opposite direction, and that's usually a worse injury on the ankle than it is rolling in like it's supposed to. And at his age, when they put it out there that he was injured, they put that he was out indefinitely. That told me that this is worse than what we think it is. Typically, they would tell you your timetable, 1 to 2 weeks, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. They gave us the indefinite. So they don't know how long it's going to take for him to heal. They don't know they know how damaged he is now by seeing the MRIs and everything, but they don't even know truly how this is going to really affect him. And because of that, this is not a good thing for them at all. So for them to overcome this, everybody's going to have to step up, but they're going to have to add one more player. Who's the number one now? Who is the go-to guy?
It's got to be Dennis Schroeder.
Right. Schroeder's also spent some time off this year. So who is the bona fide number one now that they've lost not only Anthony Davis, but also LeBron? Who is that number one? That is the question that we have to ask, and I don't think there's an actual clear answer. I mean, Trez, I don't see it. Caruso, I don't see it. KCP, I don't see it. Basically, as I look down the line of that roster, besides Schroeder, who has been a number one before, I don't see anybody else doing it. So he's probably the bona fide, but can you stay on pace with Dennis Schroeder as your only real scoring option?
Well, if you remember at the beginning of the season, Jay, he said that he was a starter in this league. He wanted to be a starter. He felt like he was good enough and he had accomplished enough in the league to be the starting point guard for the Los Angeles Lakers, which told me at the time that he was very confident in his abilities. I mean, and why not? A 6th Man of the Year candidate. We saw him here in Oklahoma City.
Yes.
Play some really good basketball. So I appreciated the confidence. But now is his opportunity to step up as one of the leaders of this team, especially the one who's going to have the ball in his hand more than anybody, and really prove what you said at the beginning of the season, that you are a starter in this league, and take the reins and try to help this team, I guess, stabilize. You can't overcome this. Like you said, we both agree. I would say if they can go 500, let's say it is a 4-week injury. So if they can go 500 over these next 16 games, then that's a decent accomplishment. That's a really good accomplishment for this team, because any team being without their top 2 players, if that squad that's left over can go 500 over the next 16 games, I mean, that's an accomplishment. That keeps you afloat. Now, they're in the 4th spot.
Yes,
no,
third. They're third spot right now, the Clippers.
You're going to lose that. You're going to drop to about probably 6 or 7, but that's okay. If you get AD and LeBron back in time enough, maybe with a month left in the regular season, you can get up to maybe 4 or 5, depending upon how things shake out. So home court in the playoffs, you can forget about it.
Yep.
Right? It's not going to happen. But that doesn't have to be a bad thing, because greats study each other. They pay attention to each other, right? So LeBron studies Tom Brady. Tom Brady studies LeBron.
Yep.
LeBron, just like the rest of us, just saw Tom Brady take his team on the road throughout the playoffs until the Super Bowl and win it all. So he'll say, okay, we don't need home court. We're the reigning champions. I'm still here. AD's still here. We don't need home court. It's better to have it. It makes the road just a little bit easier, but we can win without it as long as AD and I are healthy, and that's what we've got to do to ultimately be able to overcome this and defend our championship.
So, and I was actually about to ask you that question. How important is the regular season now? Like, this puts in the question, how important truly is the regular season?
Like, just in general?
Yeah, how important is it? I mean, because like you just mentioned, the Lakers are the defending champions. Mm-hmm. Their 2 stars are out. By the time they both come back, potentially healthy, will be closer to the playoffs, if not at the playoffs. So they'll have a ramp-up time, most likely the last week of the season, right into the first round of the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Based upon if they're able to do enough to stay in the playoff hunt, how important is the regular season?
Well, I think the regular season is important, obviously, based on how you perform in the regular season. That determines whether or not you go to the playoffs. Outside of that, I would say the last month of the regular season where you're really trying to gel, hit your peak, all those chemistry issues that you had earlier in the season need to be gone by then. It's important for teams going into the playoffs. Outside of that, it's not as important as one might think it is.
Okay.
Because you play so many games. It's not like the NFL's regular season where one loss can crush you and you have to live with it for the next 6 or 7 days. Whereas in the NBA, you have your back-to-backs, you have your every other days. You can move on beyond that.
No, you're right, and that makes sense. Okay, so I agree with that notion that the regular season, I put it like this. The regular season is not that important for the Lakers as it would be for the Utah Jazz and the Phoenix Suns.
Right.
For the Utah Jazz and Phoenix Suns, they need that home court advantage. They need that to help them to be able to propel themselves through the playoffs. They need that. That's an important advantage for them. But for the Lakers, it's not. They can go in as a 7 seed and play the Phoenix Suns and knock them out the playoffs. I can totally see them doing that. Right. They can go in as the 8 seed and probably knock off the Jazz. Now, if anybody, the Jazz don't want them at the 8 seed. That would be really bad for them if that happens. And at this point, there's only a 5 to 6 game difference between the Lakers being in the playoffs and out.
True.
So they still have the Golden State Warriors right there at the heels at 9 games behind the Jazz, which that puts them only 7 games behind the Lakers. So, like you said, if they can go 500, that may be enough. But the problem is, it's potential that it's not enough.
Well, it's the potential that they may not go 500. I'm looking at their schedule now. I have the next 16 games pulled up. Let me ask you this. I'm going to give you the team who they're going to be playing against.
Okay.
You tell me win or loss.
All right.
Starting tomorrow, the Pelicans.
That's a win.
76ers. Minus Joel Embiid.
That's...
You think they're going to beat the Pelicans tomorrow?
Maybe. That's a loss. That's a loss.
Okay. Cleveland.
That's a win.
Okay. At Orlando. No. Orlando at home.
That's a win.
Milwaukee at home.
Depends on who plays, but I'm going to give them a loss.
Okay. At Sacramento.
Sacramento's really bad. That's a win.
At Clippers. Somewhat.
Well, it depends on who plays in that game, but you know what? I'm going to give them a win on that one.
Wow. At Toronto.
At Toronto?
And this is basically in the midst of an 8-game road trip.
I'm going to say that one is, wow, this is perfect timing for them to LeBron not to have to travel, right? On an 8-game road trip. Yeah. I'm going to say that one will be, I'm going to call that one a win because I don't think Kyle Lowry will be there.
At Miami.
That's a loss.
At Brooklyn.
That's a loss.
At New York.
That's a loss. There's your 3-game losing streak.
At Charlotte.
Ooh, that's a win. No LaMelo.
Boston at home.
Boston in L.A.?
Yes.
Ooh, they'll rebound. That's a win.
Let's see, and 2 straight at Utah.
2 straight at Utah?
2 straight with Utah coming to them.
Utah coming to them. Okay, back to back, basically.
Yes.
I'm going to say they'll split it.
Okay, loss win. And at Dallas.
They should be back at that point. I'll say they'll win that game. And that'll be the one they'll need to get in the playoffs.
So you have them essentially going 10-6.
10-6
over the next 16.
Bold. Very bold.
That is very bold.
Very bold, but I think Frank Vogel is good enough as a coach to try to get them to rally. The toughest is going to be the top tier teams. That's going to be the toughest. I think the bottom feeders, they should be able to. Now, they may actually lose to a bottom feeder and then beat a top tier team.
Right.
Because that seems to be the trend as we get, especially later in the season. But I think that last week is when they'll ramp up the most, especially those Utah games. They may actually win both of those. Utah may actually pull back and start resting their players because they'll most likely have the 1 seed locked up, and they'll be prepping for the playoffs.
You know what's one of the worst things about this for the Lakers? They were just figuring out how to play without Anthony Davis.
Yep. They were.
You're just working out, the new formation of this team without him, and then boom, this happens. Now you have to do it all over again. Who are we? What are we without LeBron and without Anthony Davis?
Exactly, because you don't have an identity without your two stars. I'm sorry, that's just not how the NBA is made. The NBA, the tiers are the gap between the top 20 and the bottom 80% is large, and then the top 1% within that top 20% is a lot larger than that 20%. So. Without those star players, you will tell a difference. Now, let me ask you this.
Yes.
LeBron's done with the MVP, right?
He said done with the MVP?
He's done. There's no reason to ever talk about him in this season,
no,
right?
I know who's going to win it. He's not going to win it.
Okay, perfect. Because that's been the conversation of the weekend of LeBron should have been deserving of at least 8 MVPs.
He was just beginning to be deserving of this one, in my opinion. I was just starting to see MVP ball from LeBron. I mean, like the real MVP ball that we've seen from LeBron before.
I can't get. I don't.
Think he was I
think he was staying in the around third range still. Nothing about him was giving me. I'm still Jokic and Embiid, even with Embiid being out.
I think this benefits Jokic, and who I think is really the front runner to win it now is going to be James Harden.
Yeah, James Harden has moved up a lot, especially because he's changed that entire Brooklyn team.
We've talked about how narratives shape whether or not someone's going to win. Because think about it. I come in, we have a debacle of an inning in Houston. Was what it was. I come in. I'm only with Kevin Durant for a few games, and Kyrie is in and out, either because he gets nicked up or because he has personal or family stuff that he has to attend to.
Yep.
So it's been me carrying the ship. So that's his narrative, that he carried the Brooklyn ship. That was very unpredictable, somewhat rocky.
Yep. So, well, that's a good point. And we'll talk about that later on in the show then, and that's some good stuff. So, perfect. So, you got anything else?
Adding to this, so once this injury happened, there were some sports books who put the Brooklyn Nets as title favorites ahead of the Lakers. So in light of this happening to LeBron, and just with the idea that he is going to be back eventually, just like Anthony Davis, do you feel like the Nets should now be considered the title favorites over the Lakers?
No, not at all. And I have my reasons. We'll talk about that
a little bit later.
All right.